Hello, my fellow readers. This is I, Dark Symphony 777, with a fan fiction review. As always, a link to the story will be in the description below. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, click on that bell for notifications. Leave a comment in the comment section below on your thoughts on the story and any future fan fictions you want me to read or review. Finally, this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. So, Sonic the Hedgehog. Who doesn't like Sonic the Hedgehog? Everyone loves Sonic the Hedgehog, whether it be the cartoons, the comics, or most commonly the video games, because everyone's gotta go fast. And that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Sonic fanfiction. And the story is Burning Arrow Wildfire Heart. It is a novelization of Sonic and the Secret Rings by Tarania. I think that's how you pronounce it. I'm probably butchered it, but I'm not sure. And it is a novelization of Sonic and the Secret Rings. Now, I actually have a soft spot for Sonic and the Secret Rings. That's why I kind of picked this story specifically to review. I guess in order to kind of figure out why I get into the actual meat and potatoes of the review, I have to at least talk about the actual game itself. I know, but it's kind of the reason why I love this game and why I wanted to specifically pick this game out. So basically, Sonic and the Secret Rings was a launch title for the Nintendo Wii, and it had something of a weird development cycle. Mainly due to the fact the crew who worked on the game was actually taken from the development of Sonic 06. That game. They were told, Sega was told that that Nintendo was about to was making a new system, and Sega wanted to make a launch title, so they took half the crew, so they took like enough people to run a skeleton crew, sort of, to make we want you to make a Sonic game as a launch title for the Wii. And then they just gave them the Wiimote. This is the Wiimote. It has motion controls. Figure it out. That is basically the whole development cycle for the game summed up. They just took enough people to be able to work on the game before launch, so that way it comes out at launch. Gave them a Wiimote and said, just do something. So they decided to make Sonic and the Secret Rings. Apparently it was very hard because they literally had to figure out how the motion controls work on the fly while they were developing the game. So hence why Secret Rings was kind of lambasted for the controls. You actually play the game, the controls are actually very janky, because you basically hold the Wiimote sideways and you tilt it forward, you move Sonic forward, you move it backwards, you move Sonic backwards, except half the time when you try to move forward, Sonic moves backwards. Yeah, I died a lot because of that. I died a lot because I want to move forward, and Sonic decided to, you know what? No, you say forward, I'm going to go backwards. But Sonic and the Secret Rings is actually a very interesting story. I wanted to talk about, I just wanted to segue into that from development to the story specifically. So basically, the story of the game is Sonic is taking a nap. He's like, and then he's sucked into the Arabian Nights by the genie of the ring, Shara, who is basically the exposition genie of the story. Yeah. And so basically Sonic has to stop this guy, Eraser Jin, who is basically the Jin from Aladdin, the genie from Aladdin, from destroying the Arabian Nights, coming into the real world and doing the same thing with his world. So, and that's basically the main storyline of Secret Rings. Now, I wanted to actually talk about that first, to talk about the fact that this is a novelization, and honestly, I don't think the story is bad. I'm just very disappointed at how everything went. So you may wonder, disappointed, what does that have to do? Well, let's get started. So the story actually doesn't start with Sonic going into the Arabian Nights. It's actually about 2 chapters set up with Sonic, Sonic celebrating his birthday. Amy gives him a present, said, "Here you go, Sonic-oo." And it's basically a book of the Arabian Nights. And he's like, I'm not a reader. And so, leaves the book. Amy decides to read it. She disappears. A bunch of the Sonic characters start disappearing. Sonic, goes to see Tails, like, where's Tails? And he's like, okay, I gotta figure out what's going on. And then he ends up in the Arabian Nights, being pulled in by Shara. Shara basically needs his help, needs to help, go through the Lost Prologue, go through find King Jariar, and all that stuff. So the plot is very structurally different than the actual game, because the game's kind of straightforward as plot. Sonic is pulled into the Arabian Nights. Eraser shoots him with a fire arrow into the heart, saying you got to find the 7 rings, otherwise the arrow will kill you. Yada yada yada. So Sonic, standard Sonic stuff. This one is very structured because of how many characters are in it, and honestly how cleverly meta the story gets at times, because there's a lot of literary meta-ness the entire story. So basically, how it starts to differ is when Sonic finds Alibaba in this game. In the actual game, Alibaba looks like Tails. In this story, Alibaba is Tails, who was pulled into the story and stuff like that. Basically, that plotline is basically the book that Eraser's in, is actually trying to fix itself by absorbing real people into the story and turning them into characters. So Tails becomes Alibaba, Knuckles becomes Sinbad, Amy becomes Sharazina, I have no idea how to pronounce that. Rouge becomes Alibaba, the thief princess. Eggman becomes King Shahryar, and Shadow becomes Captain Jack Sparrow. I don't get that. But anyway, so the plot kind of stays the same, but it does have a very meta concurrent to it, in the fact that it kind of dissects storytelling as a whole with multiple characters, like Fire Arrow that Sonic has. Basically, he has to be the center of attention. But as Sonic's bringing in more of these characters, and the characters are getting more screen time, the arrow's actually burning out faster, because because Sonic is actually allowing his friends to have screen time and actually be main characters like he is, and which is burning his heart faster. I thought that was pretty clever with the whole meta context. I mean, it plays into the whole theme of the story nicely. Like, there's a lot of parts throughout the story where they actually dissect various literary terms and kind of develops them into gimmicks in various levels, like in the Lost Prologue. Like, Sonic's running along all these, these page platforms, and he comes across these round blocks, these blocks. And then he crashes into them. He asks Shara, like, what are these? And then Shara replies, well, those are writer's blocks. And that actually kind of develops a theme throughout the story. Like, Eraser's henchmen are called Mary Sue's. The circular platforms that you find in Levitated Ruin, those are called plot holes. There's also references to plot bunnies, AUs. Shara breaks the fourth wall, because that's actually how she works. Like, during Levitated Ruin, Sonic turns the stone. It's like, no, Shara, I'm stoned, what do? And then Shara goes, you gotta shake the remote. And Sonic goes, wait, what? What? What's a remote? I mean, don't worry, I'll help you get out. And it's kind of cute in that sort of weird, quirky way, because it's trying to be meta, but in a way that makes sense thematically. It's really clever how it tackles this idea. Especially, like, when it comes to, like, speedrunning, like, instead of going, like, and like, they just cut and paste, like, they skip various parts of, like, glitches and stuff. Glitches in one word. The plot between the actual game and this is actually kind of very, very big. This is more, this story may be a novelization, but it's more on the retelling side, because there's just so much added to it that you can't call it a straight up novelization, because the simple fact there's more characters, there's more stuff to do, there's like little character moments of them actually hanging out. Like it starts out with Shara, Sonic, and Knuckles, but then then this group kind of grows with like all of them kind of becoming this camaraderie, not only having a kind of group dynamic, but they also each have a different dynamic with Shara, which is where the story starts falling apart. This is why I consider the story disappointing. Now, having all these references to literary terms is one thing, because Sonic, he's in a book, Shara kind of explaining actual literary terms, actually saying stories come to life, these are plot holes, plot bunny stories, that sort of thing is one thing. Having constant pop culture references is another thing. The sheer amount of pop culture mentions throughout the entire story is astronomical. It's bad. I mean, it constantly detracts from the story. Most of them have no purpose outside of providing a quick laugh. I get it. This is an adventure humor story, so in a way, it kind of makes sense. Problem is, there's just so many unnecessary pop culture references. Like, they actually reference other Sonic games. I'm like, get Shara doing it. Like, when Shara, because not only does Shara reference the Wii game, like the turning the stone shake the Wiimote thing, she actually massively broke the fourth wall by mentioning chapter names. Like, well, wait, how is Knuckles' turn? Like, when they're on Levitated Room, before they enter Levitated Ruins, my bad, Knuckles is kidnapped by gargoyles. And so, there's an entire chapter when Knuckles is not in it. I believe it's chapter 21. And when they run into Knuckles again, and he's become Sinbad, Shara goes, well, Knuckles had to have been taken out of the story, therefore the Arabian Nights tried to fix him by turning him into Sinbad. I said, well, wait, Knuckles wasn't out of the side of the story. Yes, he was. He wasn't seen anywhere in chapter 21, which was legitimately clever. I really like that part, because it makes sense from a thematic standpoint. It's actually kind of it's actually a pretty clever joke. And it makes sense in the story, because in the actual game, when you meet Sinbad, it's actually Knuckles. So how are you going to get Knuckles based on the exposition that Shara gave, saying you have to be disconnected from Sonic's story, because Sonic is his own story in the Arabian Nights? Simple. You don't mention him in a single chapter, he becomes another character. That's actually really clever. But, and Shara breaks the fourth wall a lot. She references chapter names. She actually referenced the genre the story was, adventure humor. It's really clever. The problem is, from a storytelling standpoint, it really makes sense for Shara to be doing this, but instead, all the characters seem to do this, and there's just nonstop pop culture references, nonstop, like, throwaway gags. It doesn't make sense. Like, there's a mention when they first help out Eggman, they give his memories, and it's like, oh, I wonder who's gonna take care of the base, and then we get cut to a random gag of Metal Sonic and Mecha Knuckles kind of just hanging out and just saying, hey, we're gonna do something evil. It's like, oh, I wonder what Eggman is. And then, they think of the idea of just messing around with his finances. And then it kind of cuts back to Eggman going, oh, why do I feel a cold shoulder? Why do I feel something crawling up my spine? Mm-hmm. I know that's not the direct wording, but the intent is the same. I thought, okay, that's kind of funny. But then it kept going. Like, every couple of chapters, it cut back to these two. And I'm like, why is this joke dragging on? And that's another problem with the story, is there was a lot of plot threads which were just completely randomly dropped to start another plot point. Like, okay, let's think of an example. Shara's character, basically when she first meets Sonic and Sonic is treating her kind, she kind of starts getting infatuated. That, it kind of makes sense, because the story quickly establishes that Shara had a crap life. Not to mention, there's also this underlying plotline with the Jins being treated like dirt. Okay, makes sense. I'm like, okay, okay, so it's gonna be like a thing throughout the story with Chara, what I was expecting was one of two things. Either one, the entire story of Chara kind of getting, starting with infatuation, getting in crush, but then realizing, well, I don't love him, I love someone else, or, Chara just, full out falling in love with Sonic. What I didn't expect was the entire plot point to drop the moment Amy shows up, a completely unexpected love triangle mini plot showing up, Chara going OOC for no reason, getting obsessively jealous of Sonic, and then literally that getting dropped at the end of Levitated Ruins. I'm like, why is this happening? And it happens a lot. I'm dead serious. This is probably my biggest problem with the story, is that it happens a lot. A lot of the plot lines are just dropped, where in this type of story, it really should have been kept intact. Like, the whole thing with the Jins. Okay, the Jins were mentioned once or twice. I would have liked some more exposition, but instead, we got just one time. We got a couple pieces of exposition from Chara, and then it just dropped for most of the story until the very end, where they defeat Eraser. I'm like, wouldn't it make more sense to kind of make that the overarching theme of the entire story instead of this sort of weird meta thing? Like, that would have worked just as well. Like, you could have just balanced the two. Like, every time they go to a new location, they talk about, the Jins and stuff like that. But Chara's, constantly climbing up, like, trying not to reveal a lot of stuff outside of. So that way she doesn't accidentally reveal, oh, I love Eraser, which is actually a real thing. That's actually, it's actually hinted that Chara had feelings for Eraser. But it's just immediately dropped. There's the whole character arc with Rouge, but the problem is she shows up way too late in the story. And just like a lot of the plot lines in the story, it's just dropped. Like, she doesn't believe in fairy tales. She doesn't believe in happy endings. And yet she talks to King Solomon for like a couple sentences. And that's it. Like, that plot line is dropped. It's like, it's mentioned once in Night Palace, but it's never mentioned again. There's no resolution for it. At the end of the story, the story does mention that she went back to King Solomon mainly to get jewels, but there's no follow-up to it. It's just a collection of one overarching plot with the meta context and stuff like that, with the main storyline, but it has so many little mini side stories, but they constantly end way too early without no real clear resolution. It's constantly dropped because the start of another mini plot, and just overly clunky. Like, the main plot is fine. I have no problem with that. With Sonic having to fight Razor and stuff, and then him realizing that the arrow's getting smaller because he's actually giving more screen time to the other Sonic characters. That makes sense. That's actually a really clever plot. The problem is, it's so interspaced with all these pop culture references that kind of weaken what the story was trying to go for, as well as all these constantly stop and start and stop over and over again, mini character arcs and mini plot lines that is basically supposed to bridge the gap between each level. It makes absolutely no sense why it kept happening. It just made zero. It just completely, for the most part, destroyed the actual plot. It was really, really confusing why this was done. And it kind of left a bitter taste in my mouth. And probably the part that epitomizes what I feel about this was when at the end Chara sacrifices herself to save Sonic when Eraser, kills, because in the actual game and in the story, those who collect the world rings have to be sacrificed for someone else for control to be given. So Eraser was supposed to kill Sonic, but Chara sacrificed herself, causing her to die, which causes the end game. The problem is, in the actual game, I actually started to really like Chara, and I actually cried when she died. In the story, when I got to this part, I didn't feel anything except anger and just royal disappointment. It's like you, you did, because I knew the problem was I knew it was happening because in order for to initiate the last boss fight, Chara has to die. That I kind of was going in expecting Chara to die. That I got. The problem is everything that preceded it involving the plot overarching all these mini plots, it just felt hollow. It felt disappointing. It just why? And then after and then we got the explanation saying, oh, and Eraser has the rings and he's turning to Alflave. I have no idea how to pronounce Alefo. I don't know that. I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's like really, really hard to say. And he's explaining, well, I own the rings, which means I control everything, despite the fact in the actual story it's pretty clear that the reason, despite the fact it's actually in the story that you have to sacrifice the person collecting the rings to actually get, transformed, which the author didn't mention because you have to kill the one controlling the rings. Chara wasn't the one collecting the rings; Sonic was. So, which means that his transformation was incomplete. Like it wasn't a complete transformation. That was actually stated in well, kind of read between the lines of the actual games, but that's the point. He didn't kill the right person, and when he thought, oh, I can still do this, it resulted in what he looks like, at the last boss fight, which the author does not mention. Instead, it just goes like, oh, it's under dirt. I control the Arabian. It doesn't, and said, oh, I can now transfer without even mentioning that point, which is weird. And then it gets worse after the boss fight, where Chara kind of shows up and goes, hello, he's a good guy. I'm like, okay. And this is honestly worse than Chara's sacrifice, because that one just left me disappointed. This part just left me pissed, honestly. So after they beat Eraser's, kind of still alive, and I'm like wondering, wait, he's still alive after all that punishment? And Eraser goes, I'm immortal, you cannot defeat me. And then Sonic, has the lamp now. He has the Eraser's lamp, and so he makes his two wishes to revive Char and fix the Arabian Nights. And basically, his third wish in the game was, sealing him inside the lamp, and then throwing him inside the lava, killing Eraser. I'm like, okay, from the looks of these things, then that's probably not how they're going to handle it. So Sonic's about to make the third wish, and then Amy stops him. Amy and Chara stop him, saying, and then we got a lot of exposition saying, Eraser was actually a good person who just wanted to liberate these djinns, and he wanted to help them, but then he sell them, but he was kind of going a little extreme. So Solomon, in a panic, locked him into his lab for 1,000 years, which caused him to go mad, and then he had a witch to make the wishes. And so, okay, so you're going to like give Chara the lamp. So what I was thinking, what Sonic was going to wish for Chara to give the lamp to Eraser, and then she would handle it. So I was like, okay, it makes some kind of sense. She deals with him. She loves him, so it makes some kind of sense for her to kind of, want to help him, heal him. And even make a big deal, like, good is not soft. Like, okay, so you're going to do some kind of punishment. And then, nope, the author makes Eraser a Karma Houdini by saying, "Oh, I wish you were you before you turn evil, before being locked in the lamp." I'm like, I actually was furious at that part. It's like, no. I understand the whole, the author is trying to make him sympathetic. The problem is, it happened way too late. He had next to no character development, except in that one part. Like, this would have made more sense if you delved into the actual other stories of the Arabian Nights. You made the Jinn being treated like dirt, an overarching plot, just like the meta context sort of thing, with Sonic having to let more characters in. That would have made, and gave more time to develop Eraser's character. What we got? We got a half-ass plotline that was ended about a third of the story in, just dropped abruptly. Only we got no time to know Eraser's character, and all his character development came from literally that one moment in the last chapter. That was incredibly just why? I would have tolerated that part if I wouldn't have even cared for the Jin being treated like dirt, because we easily could have had Shara kind of do the exposition not only on the stories that we see in the game, but also other stories. He should have been the driving point of that arc, of that plot. Instead, Shara kept climbing up because she wanted to protect Eraser and wanted to keep quiet half the time. And we got no time to even know who Eraser was. That was the main problem people have with the story. It's like, okay, Eraser's an evil person. Does he have any depth? No, okay. He has no character outside of, I'm an evil genie, fear me. And I was, when you're expecting something out of a novelization, even a loose novelization like this is, I would expect something more from Eraser's character. But we didn't get anything more until the very end. Right after he already lost. Right after everything that happened. And the story has about over 250,000 words. And we find anything out about his character until literally the last chapter, after he's already beaten, after everything that's already happened. It's way too late to try and play the sympathy game. If it could have worked if Sonic gave control of the lamp to Shara, because then, it would have made sense. It would have at least somewhat completed her arc. It would have filled in some plot holes with her trying to help her. But the fact that we didn't get anything from Eraser, I'm going to talk more about Shara in characters. The fact that happens at the end, the fact that they make a big deal out of Sonic is might be good, but he's not soft, and it completely collapses on itself. It completely falls apart from what the author was trying to do. Instead of being clever, the author completely shoots herself in the foot, writes herself in a corner, and tries her best to get her out of that corner. And instead, the corner just grabs her, drags her in, stuffs her into the deepest crevice it can, and says, "This is your fault." Again, the plot could have worked if we had more time to know Eraser's character. So, now that I said that, let's move into characters. There's a bunch of characters. Sonic, Tails, Knuckles. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with them. They have a loose camaraderie. A lot of the humor came from them, which it should have. They played off each other pretty well. Amy. I have a problem with Amy. Mainly because her, and to an even greater extent, Shadow, did not need to be in the story. I get you wanted to add up a bunch of characters. That's fine, but another problem with the story is you put in too many characters. Honestly, if you wanted, based on what I read, the character should have been Shara, Eraser, Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, Eggman, and Rouge. Because Amy doesn't really accomplish much in the overall sense of the story, besides starting up that little love triangle plot, which was completely unneeded. And Shadow's even worse. Like, outside of his whole point, his whole inclusion was to do a bunch of Jack Sparrow jokes. That is it, because he does nothing after that. He talks a little bit, he throws some chaos spheres, he mentions that, oh, Amy can't summon her hammer that much, but he does nothing! He contributes nothing to the overall plot. At least Amy has some kind of relationship with Shara, and, you know, kind of contributes to the dynamic of the group and to Shara. Shara doesn't even have that! He barely shows up. He's barely talked about. He shows up way too early, way too late. Rouge shows up way later, but at least the author tries to compensate it by trying to dump all this character development on her right from the get-go, which is what Shadow should have had too, but he had no character development. He had nothing going for him outside of, oh, I'm Captain Jack's Shadow, meta. Making a whole bunch of references to Pirates of the Caribbean, which is stupid. I had a problem. That was my problem with Shadow. My problem with Amy is she was irrelevant. Like I said, she had something going for her. She had a dynamic with, you know, with the group and with Shara. So that's at least something. The problem is, outside of that, as soon as that little love triangle mini plot ended, she just completely dropped into irrelevance. It would have made more sense for you to move Rouge from Solomon's skeleton cave, took the place of Amy and Shadow taken out of the story, because Rouge's whole character was she immediately distrust Shara, which would have made a nice, you know, a nice little wrinkle in the group dynamic. And so, you know, we would have gotten more to her. We would have gotten her, you know, a little more backstory on, you know, she doesn't believe in fairy tales. She thinks fairy tales are a bunch of hogwash. And then, you know, Shara, and to a later extent King Solomon would have helped. It would have... Rouge's problem is she just showed up way too late. When she showed up, there was only about 6 chapters left in the story. That is way too late in the story to introduce another main character. And I can at least appreciate what she was trying to do by just giving her as much character development off the bat, to at least kind of make up for the fact that she shows up so late. But it comes off as being very forced. It comes off as you wanted to get another character to, you know, to kind of get this whole dynamic. But the problem is, at this point, the dynamic is completely shattered. Like, you have Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails. They have this cool group dynamic. They also have individual different dynamics with Shara, and then you had Amy, who's not really has a group dynamic. She has more of a dynamic. No, she doesn't really have a dynamic with Shara outside of that one plot line, but she kind of slides into the group dynamic fine. And then Shadow's just he doesn't have a dynamic with any of them outside of Shadow, you know. And then Rouge comes in and makes it even worse, because now, instead of giving more character development to the characters who need it, you have another character that you're just shoving so much time in, it completely off-balances everything, and it honestly comes off as you shoehorning in another character instead of it becoming natural. It really would have made more sense to just have the entire group be, again, Shara, Knuckles, Tails, Sonic, Eggman, and Rouge, because there's also a factor is Black Knight, which was a sequel to Secret of the Rings, which Amy and Shadow actually appear in. It would have made more sense if you kept them out of the story to be put into Black Knight, if you were going to do a sequel of that. Because, you know, both of them are essential to the plot. Amy is Moo, and Shadow is Lancelot. It would have made more sense to have them be there, so that way you had more sense. Since out of all the characters in this group, Shara, Eraser, Eggman, and Rouge are the only ones who don't appear in Black Knight. Instead, you know, Shara is replaced with Merlina. It just would have been a better dynamic, because Rouge would be kind of this outsider, and her whole character arc would have been her, you know, slowly warming up to Shara. She wouldn't have contributed much to the dynamic, but we would have had a pretty cool character arc of Shara and Rouge, talking and hanging out, and Shara trying to help Rouge out with trying to understand who she is, and they kind of become friends. That would have made more sense to what we got into the actual story. And then Eggman is fine, Ray, all the other minor characters like King Solomon, that's fine. Eraser. I already said about my problems with Eraser. He just doesn't show up enough. If you're trying to three-dimensionalize this character, you really should not have done that at the very end. Honestly, if you wanted to do Eraser's character justice, you could have had, like, every time. Okay, a little thing that you could have done was every time Sonic grabs a world ring and Shara shows up, she does a massive exposition dump, kind of going to the backstory of the Arabian Nights with the Jinn rebellion and the Jinn slavery and all that you could have easily did that. And that honestly is what I thought you were going for at the beginning, where Shara says, okay, the one who owns the rings is the one that has to be sacrificed. I thought that's where you're going with, and, that's just establishing that, and the rest of the rings is he would detail, like, all these bad parts that happened leading to Eraser kind of rebelling and turning into who he is. I thought that would have been cool. That would have been a nice little piece of character development. Like, who is she talking about? Is she talking about Eraser? Because we would have gotten better. Not only would we have gotten character development on Razor, a lot of character development through Shara as exposition for him, it also would have easily explained why he's not showing up in the story at all, because Shara is the one explaining his character, not him. So it would have made much more natural sense for the ending and how it happened as it did, with Shara explaining Eraser's character and how he rebelled and everything. It would have made more sense if we got those pieces in huge chunks, like you could have easily added new chapters. Like every time when he graduates, a new chapter starts of nothing but exposition of this backstory, of the backstory behind, the Jinn's mistreatment and stuff like that. That would have been a nice little subplot that would have supplemented the main story and everything. But the problem is, it's not done, and it really comes off as just too late to try and do anything with the character. And it comes off. And then finally we have Shara. Shara is a mishandled mess in the story. So, Shara is the exposition fairy. Sonic's version of Navi, if you will. Unless you count Omochao, something like that. Shara, is the one that explains everything that's going to happen. Like, when they talk about Dinosaur Valley, they said, well, they weren't always dinosaurs. They were actually incorporeal, Lovecraftian-esque monsters that no one knew how to describe. But now that people become desensitized, they just become dinosaurs. That sort of thing. That was a neat thing. The problem is, the author devotes so much time on the meta plot of Sonic bringing in more characters, that it kind of destroys the fact that she's such an integral part of the story, because as more characters are being added, her role in the story is being slowly put in the background. And that's kind of ruining things, because after reading all of these things, Shara is technically the main character. The main characters are Sonic and Shara, and everyone else is just following them. So it really makes no sense that Shara is being just completely moved to the back behind everyone, including Rouge when she shows up. That's even worse, with that at the end, when they get to Night Palace, Shara is completely almost forgotten about. It kind of what makes it feel when she dies, kind of disappointing, because she's just become so irrelevant that when she dies, it just loses all emotional impact like it did in the game. That's the problem. You could have and should have been focusing more on developing Shara. Like, Shara is the main character. She is the main source of exposition in the story. Except at the end, that's all she becomes. That's all she becomes. Instead of developing her story, instead of developing the world of Arabian Nights, instead of developing Eraser, you focus more time on adding more characters, and it takes away from everything. That's what makes it really, really sad. I'm not even mad at the story because it does have clever writing. It does have good characters. The problem is there's just too many characters, and everything is just comes off as hollow. It feels like a shell of the Secret Rings itself. And that's present in the pacing, not the pacing, that's present in the plot, and that's present in the character. It just feels like you continuously wrote yourself into a corner, and you kept bringing yourself into more corners as the story got going. I'm not mad in the story. I'm disappointed. And that's even worse than being mad, because if mad, and that's kind of a side effect of doing novelization, because you have to at least you have this expectation going into it. Okay, Sonic and the Secret Rings is a really good game story-wise. Like, it's only really topped by Black Knight. Black Knight, while the gameplay is okay, a lot of people really just praise the story because the story was actually one of the best stories in the Sonic franchise, if not the best, because of how everything is layered. And the same is kind of with Secret Rings, like, not to the extent of Black Knight, but Secret Rings has a pretty good story itself. And when I read this, everything just felt off. Everything felt like the author was trying way too hard to do all these clever things, but it comes off as hollow. It comes off as just empty promises, incomplete stories. I get if that's what you're going for, then you duped me, but it honestly doesn't feel like you're going for that. It doesn't feel like you were constantly doing these incomplete stories. It feels like you were trying way too many things at once. Like, you stretched the story to the point of absurdity, just trying to fit in as many different types of stories, plots, and characters, and it fell apart. You threw everything out the wall, trying to hope something sticks, but nothing sticks. That's the biggest problem with the story, is that you just try to put too many things in the story at once in a way that doesn't make sense. Though, not to mention, if you're going for that, it really would have made more sense to do a two-parter. This part, Secret Rings being part 1, Black Knight being part 2. It would have made more sense if you kind of cut these into two mega epics, like this is Arc 1, Black Knight is Arc 2. You probably would have had Shara join in King Arthur's court, something like that. It would have been clever. It would have been fun to have, Shara, like, slap Merlin upside the face for doubting Sonic's power, and stuff like that. But it's like you were trying to put too many characters, too many jokes, you were just trying too hard. That's honestly what I ultimately get from the story. You were just trying way too hard to try and do too many things, and instead of having the effect that you wanted, it completely caused the story to collapse, fall apart. And again, that's saying something, because the story had a lot of good ideas, and a lot of the ideas were actually rather well. It's just you just kept trying to add in two differing things before the ones you were already working on were finished. Characters were incomplete. The little plot lines were incomplete. It was just too much, and it broke because you just completely. I know I'm repeating myself. You just did, but this just really hurts. The story just really hurts, because I really. Let me just continue. Plot, the grammar is fine. The pacing is actually fine. The sentence structure is fine. All that jazz is fine. The only problem is and now we get to the end part. Favorite part. I know it's a really, really weird part, but Captain Jack Shadow. I know I don't like it, but it's entertaining and actually pretty hilarious. It just does not fit. It just reeks of you just trying to find some way to get Shadow into the story, and you're in a water area, like, and the villain and the boss of the area was a pirate captain. So I was like, let's make him a pirate, but there's no pirates in the there's no pirates in the Arabian Nights. We'll rip off Disney. It honestly does feel like shoehorning, but at least it's entertaining for what it was. Especially the picture of Shadow, sashaying running, and Sonic actually like nearly fainted, like, oh, you're you're running like him too. Oh. It's actually a pretty funny image to picture just the image of Shadow just with his arms wide and his chest puffed up and he's just running like Jack Sparrow. It was funny. It was shoehorned, but it was funny. And then we get to if I recommend this, and this is and this hurts the most. I can't. I genuinely want to recommend the story. I really do because I like the writing. I liked a lot of the characters. I liked what the author wanted to do and was trying to do. But there's just so many different ideas stuffed to the brim that I can't. I genuinely can't. If I had any bias, I would. Once I take the bias out and I see it objectively, I just see a pretty good overarching plot, just completely covered with all these just incomplete characters and plot and mini plot lines that cause it to completely destroy the main plot, main story, and that genuinely hurts because I really, really wanted to recommend the story. I really, really did. I it's just it hurts because if it wasn't for all those incomplete mini plots, I would have tolerated the incomplete characters enough that I would recommend it right off the bat. But incomplete characters, especially Shara, since she's shafted to the end of the line, and all these incomplete plots that you just start and then stop and then start and stop, it completely just destroyed everything. It was like it was just no, and really, I really wanted to recommend the story. I really did. Because if it was just a plot, just a normal plot, no character, like it's just Sonic and Shara, same plot, just with Sonic, I still would have recommended it. It was just too much. It was just too many things you were trying to do at the same time. It just destroyed it. It hurts because I really love Sonic and the Secret Rings. I really love this story, but I can't recommend it. I can't. I really it just I can't. I know you're probably wondering. I said, why did you recommend it? Because that's not what a critic does. Because I know I'm probably gonna get a comment from the author, from someone saying that you really like the story. Why aren't you recommending it? Because that's not what a critic is supposed to do. A critic is supposed to be unbiased. They're supposed to be an educator. They're supposed to be a judge. They're not by putting by making by putting in my own bias. I would be ruining everything I said before. And I cannot under any circumstances happen, because if I put my bias and say I criticize this whole story for all these problems but still recommended it, then what was the point of me saying like a near 30 plus minutes of everything that's wrong with the story? It would make it null and void. It would make it irrelevant. And, you know, that just more than any other story I reviewed, this part hurts the most because it had good characters, it had a good plot. It was just a problem of just too many things, just putting in too many things and having it pile up. And even then, it was just too much. And I really, really, really hope that Tarina does not take this the wrong way, mainly due to the fact that she'll probably read this part, say I still would want to recommend it, but I simply can't, and then probably throw a fit. That's honestly what my main fear of this review specifically is about. That she'll come after me, say that you should have recommended because you still liked a lot of the majority of the story. Why didn't you? And you know, it's stuff like this. The reason why I said this is at the beginning, I said this is my opinion. My opinion is not indicative of everyone in the world, so please respect that. But as a critic, you have to get rid of any biases. You have to. I love Secret Rings. I genuinely love the games, janky controls and all. I love the storytelling aspect. I love Shara. I think she's an amazing character in the game. I love the boss fights. I love the gameplay. I loved everything about that game, including the level up system. A lot of people didn't like the level up system. I thought it was fun and different. I'm not like most Sonic fans who said, "Oh, Sonic. If Sonic goes fast, then anything that slows him down in any way is automatically garbage." No, I judge things based on the gameplay and the story and everything like that. The only part I had was the actual controls because Sega team was forced in a situation they had no control of. They were forced to develop that game while at the same time trying to figure out how the freaking motion controls work. They they were they were screwed from the get go. Final, what would I change? Now that I got that out of the way, what would I change? I just complete get rid of Amy and Shadow. I'm going under the assumption that you're probably going to make a sequel to this still with Black Knight. Move Amy and Shadow to Black Knight so that they're more impactful there. Move Rouge up. Leave it those 7 characters. The same thing could happen. Is just we have Shadow Rouge's storyline that can be worked on more. You would have had more time to develop Shara's character, add in the exposition chapters, just so that way the whole Sonic, helping Eraser at the end would make more sense and have a better impact. And honestly, just complete some of the lesser plot points. That's really it. Because the main plot point, the main story, like the overarching story, there's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with Sonic's characters, there's nothing wrong with Tails' characters, nothing wrong with Knuckles or Eggman. Even to a lesser extent, there's nothing really wrong with Amy's character. It's just Amy just is kind of irrelevant. And that's really it. You just need to give Shara. You need to focus more on Shara. That's pretty much the long and short of it. Because all these problems can be traced back to the fact you mishandled Shara. That's pretty much it. Just fix Shara's character, and you're good. Really, it really, really hurts that I have to not recommend the story. It really hurts. Anyway, this has been Dark Symphony 777 with Burning Arrow, Wildfire Heart. I will see you next time, and cut.